Say hello to Sara Lee Half Loaves. Half the loaf, all the love.
I found myself where I knew I needed to finish my education. I chose Purdue Global because the faculty...
Alright, this is going to be a very long video. You know me, normally I would love to sit here and ramble for about 4 to 7 minutes before I get into the video proper. But I'm sure you've seen the title, you've seen the thumbnail. We're here today to talk about Star Darlings, a very short-lived project from Disney from the mid-2010s that has just kind of sat in the back of my head for a very long while now. This is a video I've been working on for a while, more than a year at this point, and not even really actively working on it, just starting to work on it, then getting intimidated by the sheer scale of it, then just tabling it for a while, but I'm done. I'm finished tabling. We're gonna do this today. What is Star Darlings? Oh my god, I'm so glad you asked. Just sit there and don't move for a few hours, because I have so much to talk about. Chapter 1. What is Star Darlings? Star Darlings is a 2015 multimedia franchise that was produced and backed by Disney, created by the husband-wife duo of Ahmet Zappa and Shauna Muldoon Zappa. Ahmet is the son of the musician Frank Zappa, which, yes, I know calling him a musician is like a massive understatement, but this video ain't about him. The point is that Ahmet has had a very long and productive career in music production himself. That seems to be his primary focus, but also has an established working relationship with Disney, producing and selling films for them. The biggest of which is probably The Odd Life of Timothy Green in 2012. I searched and searched for, maybe a full interview or an article that quotes one of them on their inspiration or what it was like to create this franchise. There's not a whole lot of those, unfortunately, but I did find a quote from Ahmet in a press release from when Star Darlings first launched in fall of 2015. Our intention with Star Darlings has always been to empower every girl, no matter where she was born or what she looks like, to understand that she has what it takes within to make her own wishes come true, through the unstoppable energy created by positive thinking, taking action, and believing in yourself. And also this quote from Andrew Sugarman, who was the executive vice president of Disney Publishing at the time. Star Darlings represents a fully realized world where strong, confident girls are front and center. We're excited to announce this all-new, innovative property tailor-made for today's tween, and the launch of Star Darlings represents one of our broadest multi-platform launches to date. I did find at least one interview with Ahmet through the website GeekDad. For all purposes, he seems like a pretty cool guy. The series as a whole is dedicated to his own daughter, Halo, and he says this about it. Well, first off, I have a daughter, and there isn't a thing in the world that I wouldn't do for her. I want her to grow up knowing that anything is possible, that she can do whatever she sets her mind to, and can achieve things in life by taking action, never compromising herself, respecting differences, and treating people with dignity, kindness, and compassion. That being different is rad, and that she should try to have as much fun in life as possible, and, most importantly, never lose her sense of humor. Then, also, towards the end, there's a part where he says he's all for abolishing gender labels and hopes Star Darlings appeals to boys, too. Right on. So, a franchise aimed at tween girls, and also, in their words, a very ambitious launch at that. No doubt inspired by the likes of Monster High by Mattel, which had launched a few years earlier, and, well, they didn't create this model, but they definitely popularized it, of fashion dolls having all this media surrounding them. Webisodes, animated specials, books, music. In the case of Star Darlings, the main focus was on a series of middle grade chapter books. 14 were released in total, and I have them all here with me. But there was also a webisode series, a couple of televised specials, and of course, dolls, which I also have here with me. Whereas Monster High went on to become a worldwide phenomenon, Star Darlings barely lasted more than a year, and is largely forgotten outside of people like me that spend entirely too much time thinking about toys. So despite using the model that something like Monster High set up for them, Star Darlings couldn't even come close to replicating its success. And we'll talk about why. We'll also, of course, discuss the characters and the plot and the dolls. No stone unturned, so let's get into it. Chapter 2. The characters. So who are these titular Star Darlings? I couldn't decide if it was better to discuss the characters or the world building first, but for me personally, characters are the most important part of something like this. That's where I always go first. I like to zero in immediately and find out which ones are going to be my favorite. Everything else comes after. When Star Darlings first launched, it did so with a website that featured pretty robust character profiles for all of the main cast. It even included pictures of their dorm rooms, which I always thought was a really cool character building detail. The website has unfortunately since been taken down, but it's still accessible thanks to the Wayback Machine. And I'll include screenshots of their profiles here as I do quickly go through them all, so feel free to pause and read more about them if you want. But for some basic information, Star Darlings takes place in a world called Starland, which is essentially like a planet somewhere out above Earth. It's a very futuristic utopia sort of society that uses elements of both science fiction and fantasy. If you remember how Winx Club was in the early season when it liked to blend futuristic technology with fairy magic, it's actually a lot like that. Inhabitants of Starland are called Starlings, and our story takes place at a prestigious boarding school called Starling Academy, which is kind of like a school here on Earth being named Human Academy, but I digress. All of our main characters are students there, studying to become wish granters. Everyone there glows and sparkles and has a very signature monochromatic color scheme. Each of the 12 main characters corresponds to a sign of the zodiac. The astrology theming is unfortunately pretty subtle. Like, it's not ever mentioned or brought up in the actual series, but each girl is absolutely modeled after the personality traits of their specific sign. The leader, and more or less the de facto protagonist of the series, is Sage, for Sagittarius. She's a first year at the school and is the archetypal, bright-eyed, charismatic, but slightly awkward new girl. Libby, for Libra, also a first year, is a generous, upbeat, and very sweet-natured girl. A very much the resident girly girl. She's one of my personal favorites. Leona, for Leo, she's confident, dramatic, and very musically gifted. Unlike most of the other girls, she doesn't actually want to be a wish granter. Rather, she aspires to be a pop star. Vega, for Virgo, that's me, is a second year. She's the most academically gifted of the group, so she's very logical, a perfectionist, and she's very good with technology. She is my favorite. I'm entirely predictable. I have to rep for my Virgo sister. Scarlet, for Scorpio, she's a third year. She's known to be kind of an outcast. She's a loner, mostly due to her obsession with wanting to live on Earth, but she's also very creative and very passionate. These five, Sage, Libby, Leona, Vega, and Scarlet, are the primary cast. All 12 girls are considered main characters, but these five are the...
That feeling when you're trying to build your credit, and it's like over and over again. Good news, Chase...
main main characters. So most of the marketing focuses on them. They're the most prominent in the animated series too, with all the other girls being relegated more or less almost to background roles. Oh, and they're also all in a band, which is also called Star Darlings. So you'll see a lot of promotional images with these 5 holding instruments or playing music. And they also, in universe, are the band that sings the Star Darlings main theme, Wish Now, as well as all the other songs featured in the series. So they also have prominence in the music videos. The remaining characters are Cassie for Cancer. She's the only exception to what I just talked about. She's really the only one in the secondary group to get a decent amount of screen time, also to be featured in promotional illustrations from time to time. She's very sweet, very shy, and she loves to read books. Piper for Pisces' second year. She's very spiritual and poetic. Dreamy is probably a good word to describe her. Astra for Aries, second year. She's the resident jock. She's confident, she's brash, and she loves sports. Tessa for Taurus, third year. I would probably describe her as the mom friend. Her primary hobby is baking, and she's always looking out for everyone, especially Gemma, who is her little sister. Adora for Aquarius, third year. She's the one that's most interested in science, but she also loves fashion, and she's always looking for ways to combine the two. She's another character I really like, but like most of the others in this group, she really suffers from just a lack of focus. Clover for Capricorn, third year. She's also very into music, but she prefers to take more of a backstage role. Gemma for Gemini, first year. She's extroverted, easily excitable, and very talkative. Also, as I said, Tessa's little sister. Outside of these 12, there's also just a few other characters that are important to know. Lady Stella, she's the headmistress of Starling Academy and portrayed as this very wise and regal mentor figure. I actually think she kind of sucks, which I guess isn't entirely her fault. It's a byproduct of plots that focus heavily on child characters. The adult characters, the authority figures, they all just seem very incompetent in comparison. Lady Cordial, head of admissions and Lady Stella's second in command. She's portrayed as generally well-meaning, but pretty clumsy, inept, and also very bad at her job to kind of a concerning degree. And finally, Vivica, another first-year student. She's the very archetypal mean girl bully type character. Except whereas those characters usually have some degree of popularity, it's generally seen that almost no one at the school actually likes Vivica. I think the characters are probably one of the strongest things about Star Darlings, because it's a large cast, yeah, but every character feels very, very distinct from one another. I think they do such a good job of communicating at just a glance every girl's personality, her style, who she is, and also do so in a way that makes them very visually interesting too. Which I understand when you say that out loud, it doesn't necessarily sound impressive. Like, yeah, you have characters who are all different people and look like different people. Groundbreaking. But I think especially for a franchise that is aimed at young girls, this is something that tends to be kind of a struggle. You know, usually there's a cast of girls and they all sort of have the same silhouette, same vaguely modern girly fashion style, especially when it comes to a series that incorporates dolls, right? But I think Star Darlings does such a good job of giving every character a very distinct persona, and also manages to incorporate this very celestial sort of theme into it too. They do have this very vague alien-esque aesthetic to them, which I think is really cool. I think they did a good job with the diversity too. They are from outer space, so there's some degree of like racial ambiguity to it. No one gets assigned a specific race or culture, but there's such a good range of skin tones and different facial structures among the characters. You can tell the designers cared a lot about representing a very wide range of girls, and I think it paid off too. And the cast in general is just very charming. They're based on archetypes, obviously, but no one feels too much like a stereotype. No one has just one personality trait that gets run into the ground. Like, yeah, Vega is the smart one, but she's also driven. She's a hard worker, and her perfectionism sometimes makes her fussy and narrow-minded. Libby is obviously this girly girl of the group, but she's also patient and diplomatic, and she tries to make everyone happy. So I think that's where Star Darlings really shines, giving you this large cast of colorful, well-defined characters that you can absolutely relate to. Chapter 3, the world building. So the world of Star Darlings, or Starland, it has a mutually beneficial relationship with Earth, or as they call it, Wish World. Once I get to the book summaries, I might end up using both Earth and Wish World interchangeably, which I apologize if that gets confusing, but know that they mean the same thing. Earth is Wish World is Earth. Starlings call Earth Wish World because their entire society is powered by wishes from humans, or wishlings. Again, I might say both wishling and human, they're the same thing. Wishlings are humans. So what happens is that humans make a wish, which manifests into a wish orb and gets sent to Starland. The wish is studied and identified, and a professional wish granter is sent down to Earth, disguised as a human to help make it come true. The positive energy from the granted wish is then collected and converted to power on Starland. Wishes are broken down into 3 different classifications. Good wishes. Wishes that amount to something positive, like doing well in school or wishing for a new job. These are the primary source of energy for Starland. Impossible wishes. These are wishes that are beyond the ability for Starlings to grant, like world peace. They're kept under observation in the hopes that they'll eventually turn into a more manageable good wish. Bad wishes. Wishes that amount to something negative, like wishing for someone else to fail or wishing for them to get hurt. Bad wish orbs are considered to be somewhat toxic to Starlings and are never granted under any circumstances. Instead, the orbs are collected and stored in a special containment facility. So, Starlings grant our wishes, and we give them power. However, it's necessary for this connection to remain a secret, because if humans knew that there was an alien race out there granting our wishes, they would overwhelm them with lots of very intentional and likely very selfish wishes. Also, all Starlings are born with the ability to manipulate wish energy. Some are more powerful than others, but it manifests essentially as a telekinesis. One of my favorite things about Star Darlings is that you can really tell that the authors put a lot of thought and a lot of care into crafting this world. It's so imaginative in a way that I think really connects with kids too, without being too complicated or being too simple, which really isn't that easy to do. But this is a series that definitely respected its audience, at least in the books, but we'll get to that. Aside from the wish-granting system and the whole futuristic utopia thing, Starling society is not too different from human society. All the characters come from different social backgrounds. Some have big families, some have small families, some come from wealth, some from more modest means. Some live in the city, some live in the country or on a farm. But they do differ from human society in a lot of key ways. In fact, it's stated a few times in the series that starlings find humans to be very primitive. A few of the characters even notably look down on humans, while others view them sort of like pets or babies. Basically, beings that are incapable of taking care of themselves or solving their own problems. I'm not actually sure if the authors intended for it to come off like so negative. That's the vibe I got. And don't get me wrong, I actually found it kind of fun. Anyways, while I was reading the books, I kept this running list of things that the characters would encounter while on Earth, and it would point out in the narration that this thing doesn't exist on Starland. And after 14 books, the full list is crime, war, or any kind of oppression, trash, dirt, or any sort of mess. All garbage magically disappears if it's dropped on the floor, and clothes don't stain. But because of this, they also lack any kind of cleaning utensils, sickness, or disease.
Hi, I'm Becca. How can I help you today?
I'll get this ready, Doze.
A Boost mobile expert really delivered and set up my new phone while I'm on the job.
Everything is set up and running for you.
You made this whole switching thing easy. Just don't touch anything.
Oh, hello.
Introducing Store to Door.
Fish, just in general. Also meat. All living things, including the animals, are vegetarian. There is a slightly disturbing moment in Libby's book where she sees fish for the first time at an aquarium, and then she watches a sea lion eat fish, which she just learned were living beings. Refrigerators. Surnames. Fire. Service workers. All menial tasks are taken care of by bots, which are just like autonomous robots. One of them is kind of like a series mascot, Moj4. And body image issues. So I think that should give a good overview of the kind of society that the characters live in. Chapter 4, the plot summary. This will undoubtedly be the longest section, and I really struggled with whether or not I should include it, but I asked my audience, you guys, if I should include the plot summaries and just let this video be however long it needs to be, or if I should keep it short and concise, and pretty overwhelmingly, you guys voted for length. But I also have some personal reasons for wanting to be more in-depth with this section. One, I completely understand how frustrating it is to watch one of these videos, a deep dive, a retrospective, and not feel like you're getting the full story, especially if the story is not very accessible. As far as I know, there is no easily accessible full plot summary for Star Darlings. There are for some of the books, but not for all of them. And Disney is kind of trying to pretend that this series never existed. They removed the website. They took down the YouTube channel just a few months ago, which had all of the webisodes and music videos on it. I'm pretty passionate about archival, and I know that a YouTube video retrospective is not the best definition of archiving a full series, but I do think it goes a long way in the sense of, like, putting it all in one place. To that end, I think a full, easily accessible plot summary is a great thing to have. If you can't read the books, if you can't watch the webisodes, at least you can get the story in this way. To that end, 2 big shout outs. One to the Star Darlings wiki for saving and archiving all the illustrations, website graphics, and promotional images, and also to the YouTube channel, Star Darlings Archive, for saving and re-uploading the webisodes. Also, I should mention that I really struggled with how to format this section. That's actually one of the reasons it took me so long to just sit down and commit to this video. One thing about Star Darlings is that its 3 core tenets, the books, the webisodes, and the dolls, are all extremely unbalanced. I'll talk about this more a little later, but I think that was more or less the fatal flaw to this series and why it didn't really take off. The books, the dolls, and the webisodes are all in such disharmony with one another. And to make it worse, the most easily accessible form of media for Star Darlings, the webisodes, are easily the worst part. The books, I really enjoyed the books. I thought they were cute, they were charming, they were fun. Conversely, the webisodes, I really wouldn't hesitate to call them really bad and honestly kind of uncomfortable to watch. In fact, I remember watching them in 2015, 2016, and being, like, just really put off to the point that I didn't revisit this series for a long time. The webisodes also very much do not adapt the books, but rather than talk about the books in a big chunk and then talk about the webisodes in a big chunk, I've decided to do both simultaneously. So even though the webisodes do not really follow the books, it's sort of implied that they happen as the books are going on. So I did my best to construct a sort of full timeline of both book and webisode, which is not accurate at all, but I just thought it was the best way to do this. Also, I felt it was a good way to illustrate how jarring the webisodes are compared to the books, so let's do this. Let's discuss the entire Star Darlings plot. There will be timestamps and chapters and such if you're not really interested in the plot, so feel free to skip or come back later. The books were published from September 2015 to January of 2017, while the webisodes ran from October 2015 to November 2017. So, yeah, almost pretty much simultaneously. In addition to the storybooks, there's also one supplementary book, A Wisher's Guide to Starland. This is essentially like an art book that has illustrations and profiles of all the characters, as well as some school staff members, and even some artwork of plants and animals on Starland. But we'll start with the very first chapter book, released in September of 2015. Sage and the Journey to Wish World. The first book is, of course, Sage's. A lot of this one is world building and establishing the setting that we just discussed, as well as very brief and very rough introductions to some of the main cast. Since this is the first book that, introduces the entire world, the summary of this one is probably going to be the longest one and will require a lot of explaining things with no visuals. Because again, it is a book. Bear with me. Sorry. For Sage, we learn that she comes from a close, tight-knit family and that her mother is a very prominent and accomplished researcher. She's a new first-year student at Starling Academy and shares her room with another first-year, Cassie, whose book will come a little later. After the opening ceremony, Sage and 11 other girls are called to the office of the school's headmaster, Lady Stella. She says they were called to act as an experimental test group of wish granters, because she believes that the wishes of children will be more potent and powerful if granted by young starlings rather than adult ones. To accomplish this, she plans to send the entire group to Wish World, Earth, to blend in with the humans. She very intentionally does not explain why she chose these 12 girls specifically, though. The headmistress does explain that this must remain a secret, however, due to being controversial. She tells them that their cover will be that they are reporting to a monitored study group, to which Vega, in signature Virgo fashion, objects to, because she doesn't want anyone to think that she needs help with her classes. The students all receive wish pendants that will magically aid them on their missions, which are these jewels that are fashioned into various accessories. Sage's is, I think, the only one that is actually a literal pendant. Later, Cassie's uncle visits, which creates an awkward situation because he tells Sage that Cassie's parents have both passed away, or in Starland terms, began their afterglow. This creates an awkward situation because Cassie had lied earlier about both of her parents still being alive. She apologizes for lying in what was actually like a really touching way, but she does ask Sage to please never bring up her dead parents ever again. Afterwards, Sage is summoned by Lady Stella for the Star Darlings' very first mission. The base of operations is this secret network of underground caverns that is known to only a few select members of the school faculty. This is important, and it will come up a lot throughout the books, but it's honestly kind of confusing. I don't think I ever really understood exactly what the visual of this cave system was supposed to be. But anyways, once all the Star Darlings are there, there is a ceremony of the wish orbs selecting which of them will go to Earth and grant it. Of course, Sage is chosen to be the very first. Starlings travel to Wish World by means of falling stars. Star Wranglers will lasso the stars mid-fall, attach them to it, and then they are, in Sage's words, flung into the heavens. So here's how the whole wish granting process works, because I don't want to explain this 12 separate times. Once they're on Earth, the Star Darling in question will disguise herself as a human girl. They're equipped with their wish pendant, which stores their wish energy, a backpack personally given to them by Lady Stella, and a Star Zap, which is basically a magical iPhone that gives them directions to their wisher and also some basic instructions. Once they find their wisher, they have to manually identify what it is that they want and help make it come true. They have a limited amount of time to do this, and if they don't, the mission fails. The Star Darlings all also have a unique special power, but it's up to them to find out what it is. Every Starling, though, has this power to brainwash adults. It is not ever fully explained, but when adults are around Starlings, they smell some kind of nostalgic childhood dessert, and for some reason this makes them more open to suggestion. It's as weird as it sounds, but they all do this many times throughout these books. Predictably, on Earth, Sage acts like a total clueless alien, but most students just assume she's joking around, and she manages to endear herself to a group of girls. None of them are her wisher, but they do identify two other possible suspects. Genevieve, who is the meanest and most spoiled girl in school, and Jane, another new student who seems to act pretty awkward and aloof, leaving most other students to resent her. She also discovers her special power, though, which is reading other people's thoughts. Sage assumes that her wisher must be Jane, feeling affirmed when her wish pendant glows in Jane's presence. Jane tells Sage that her mom convinced her to invite everyone to her birthday party, but not a single person RSVP'd. So Sage speculates that the wish she needs to grant is everyone coming to her party. She spends some time with Jane and helps her to become more confident and approachable to her classmates. Even though it seems like the wish mission is going well, Sage's wish energy levels start to rapidly deplete. On the day of her birthday party, Tessa shows up. This is another recurring thing that will happen in almost every book. But not Tessa specifically, just another Star Darling coming down to help out towards the end of the mission. Tessa helps Sage see that Jane isn't her wisher. Genevieve, the mean girl, was, except she's not actually mean. She's just rich and socially awkward, so everyone just assumed she was mean. She's actually been complimenting Sage throughout this entire book, but Sage just assumed she was being sarcastic. Her wish is for people to see that she's actually a nice person who wants friends, so Sage brings her to the party, helps her use her fashion skills to get along with all her classmates there. Genevieve's wish is granted, and it manifests into positive wish energy that Sage absorbs into her pendant. Back home, Genevieve's wish transforms into a power crystal, this purple gem that Lady Stella gives to Sage. She doesn't explain the significance of it, she just tells Sage to protect it with her life. Stella loves to withhold important information. It is basically her favorite pastime. At the very end, Sage discovers that Cassie is housing a pet glow fur in their room, which is against the rules, but she promises not to say anything. Then she falls asleep, exhausted, but proud of herself. Which brings us to the first Star Darlings webisode. The first webisode, Star Charmed, is also the longest, if you don't count the TV special at the very end. It runs about 7 minutes, where the others are between 3 and 4 minutes long. It's also the only one, again, aside from the finale, to directly adapt one of the books, though with some differences. The episode covers the scene in Sage's book where Lady Stella gathers all of the Star Darlings and explains their purpose. However, here, Lady Stella tells the girls that they are all part of an ancient prophecy that says that 12 star-charmed starlings will grant 12 wishes and save Starland from an energy crisis. In the books, this is the case, but Lady Stella intentionally withholds all of this information until much later in the book series. Anyways, worth noting, all the Star Darlings appear in this episode, but only 5 get any dialogue or characterization. Sage, of course, plus Leona, Vega, Scarlet, and Libby. Vivica also makes an appearance to taunt Sage at the end, but Lady Stella physically abuses her with her powers. Actually. Which brings me to one of my primary issues with the webisodes. They are, for some reason, just very mean-spirited and awkward. But on a good note, I do like the character models and the adaptation of the art style. The cell shading, a little rough around the edges, but the animation itself usually isn't bad. The second episode, Wish House Rocked, also seems to take place at some point during Sage's book, before her wish mission. She breaks into the wish house, which is where the wish orbs are stored until they're ready to be granted. She forces Cassie along with her, even though what they're doing is against the rules, and Cassie is visibly uncomfortable the entire time. They run into Scarlet, who is supposed to be guarding the wish house. She threatens to report both of them and get them expelled because she doesn't like them. But they threaten in turn to tell that Scarlet wasn't paying attention when they broke in. So they essentially blackmail each other.
Of all the animation topics I've covered so far on this channel, I really think this is one of, if not the most important. Not only because you'll probably use it a lot and it looks cool when done well, but also because the same motions can be used to animate a bunch of other things. More on that later. Let's start simple and easy. For short hair or fur that's stylized like this, you can first draw your 2 keyframes, one with all the hair going one direction, and the other going the other direction. Then add some in-between frames using